Hello everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel R Square Pathshala. My name is Ravi Seni. So in the previous lecture, we have learned about the government. We have seen the forms of government. We have learned about the functions of the government that it performs and why we need a government. We all these topics we have covered in the previous lecture. So in today's lecture we'll be starting at chapter 4, that is key elements of a democratic government. So basically, as the chapter's name, in this lecture we will be discussing, or will be try to know the key elements of the democratic government, which includes equality, justice, people's participation, and the resolution of conflict. Okay, so if you look at the map, this is the region called South Africa. It's a country in African continent. So South Africa is a country which have people of several races. There are black people who belong to South Africa. There are white people who came there to settle, and Indians who came as laborer and traders. So basically, in South African country, the people of various races are resides, which includes the native people of South Africa called the black people, white who came there to settle, and the Indians who came as laborer or trader, or who were brought by the Britishers to for their uh, in for the plantation labor. So we'll just quickly uh, read this story, or the conversation between Maya and her mother, and then we'll see what what was the life in South Africa. Okay, so Maya Naidu, an 11-year-old South African girl living in the town of Johannesburg, was helping her mother clear up her old boxes. She found a scrapbook full of pictures and newspaper articles. There were many pictures of a young schoolboy of around 15 years of age. When she asked her mother who the boy was, she was told that he was called Hector Peterson. He had been shot by the police. Maya was shocked. Why? She asked. Her mother explained that South Africa was earlier governed by apartheid laws. Now, what is apartheid laws? Apartheid means on the means a separation on the basis of races. Apartheid means separation on the basis of races. That means apartheid laws means there were different laws for the different races. For example, there were different laws for the black people, there were different laws for the white people, and there were different laws for the non-white people. Basically, races were divided into white and non-white. In non-white, there was black people who were the native of South Africa, and Indians, or the colored people, who came as laborer and traders. So basically, apartheid laws means laws for different races, or laws on the basis of race. So South African people were divided into white, black, and Indian. White, black, Indian, and colored races. So according to the law, these races were not allowed to mingle with each other, to live with each other, or even to use common facility. Basically, apartheid means based on the race. So apartheid laws means there were separate laws for each race, and the people of these races were not allowed to mingle with each other. They were not allowed to live near to each other, and they were not allowed to even use the common facilities. So So when Maya learnt about this, she could not believe her ears. Maya's mother sounded angry when she spoke about life under apartheid. Obviously, when you were not, there were so many people, and you were not allowed to intermix. You were not allowed to reside near to each other and to use common facility, despite being the citizen of the country. Then obviously, there was life of the people was very bad. So she told Maya that in those days, hospitals were separate and so were ambulances. So there were separate hospital for separate races. Similarly, ambulances were separate. An ambulance meant for white people would always be well equipped, while one meant for black people was not, as white race was superior than the black race, as they have considered. So hospitals and ambulances were well equipped for the white people, and same were not for black people. So there were separate trains and buses for different races. Even the bus stops were different for black and white people. Are you getting my point? Basically, in South Africa, there were different races, and there were apartheid laws, means there were separate laws for the separate races. They were not allowed to mingle with each other. There were separate laws for each race. There were separate public services for each race. There were separate hospital, ambulances, train, bus stops for white, black people. So non-whites were not allowed to vote. The best land in the country was reserved for the white people. Non-white had to live on the worst available land. See the discrimination or injustice here. The best land of the country was reserved for white people, and the non-white had to live on the worst available land. So this is clearly injustice, because the races were not equal. There were different races, there were different laws for different races, but there was no equality. It was discrimination or injustice to non-white people. Thus blacks and colored people were not considered to be equal to whites. So clear case of inequality. Inequality means injustice. Okay. One black township was the southwestern township, Soweto. Hector Peterson lived there, and he and his classmates joined the protest against learning the African language. So why Hector Peterson was killed? Basically, they led or they joined a protest against the learning the African language in the school. Basically, African language was spoken by the white people, and they wanted white people wanted the black to learn about this African language, while the students wanted to learn about their own language. The language was Zulu. So they wanted to learn their Zulu language, but white people wanted them to learn African language, which was language of the white people. So South African police beat the protesters mercilessly and shoot at the crowd. So one of their bullets killed Hector. So this was on 16th June 1976. So African National Congress, a group of people who led the struggle against apartheid, because apartheid system was basically the system of discrimination or the system of injustice. So there was African National Congress, a group of people. They led the struggle against this apartheid system, and the most known leader was Nelson Mandela. He fought the apartheid system for several years and finally succeeded in 1994, when South Africa became a democratic country in which people of all races were considered equal. So there was injustice, obviously. There was a protest against injustice. So a group called African National Congress struggled against the system, and finally in 1994 South Africa became a democratic country where all the people of all races were considered equal. So so what we learned from this story, so what basically we have learned is that when there is feeling of inequality or injustice, those people who were not benefited from the system were sufferers. So they struggle for the betterment of their life, or they struggle or they protest against the system. So ultimately there has to be some resolution to their demand, which make them to feel equal along with other section of the society. So one of the key element of the democratic government was participation. So as we have learned in the last lecture, that people make the decision in a democracy. Democracy is the government of people. How? People vote in elections and elect their leaders to represent them. These representatives take decision on behalf of people. So in the elections, the uh, the eligible population or the adult population votes in the election. They represent their leader, and those leaders participate in the decision making on behalf of the people. So basically people indirectly take decision or make decision in a democracy. So in doing so, it is assumed that they will keep in mind the voices and interest of the people. Got it? What is participation? People participate in election. They elect their representative, who in turn participate in the decision making. While participating in the decision making, he keeps in his mind the voices and the interest of the people. Okay. So all governments are elected for fixed periods. In case of India, the period is 5 years. Once elected, the governments can stay in power only for that period, which is 5 years. If they want to continue to be in power, then they have to be re-elected by the people. This is a moment when people can sense their power in a democracy. In this way, the power of the government gets limited by regular elections. A system of regular elections here, that is 5 years. After every 5 years election happens, and if someone wants to be in power again, he has to be re-elected by the people, then only he can continue in the government. Okay, this way participation in election is one of the key element of democratic government. Other ways of participation, what are the other ways? One is participation in election. What are other ways? So elections usually held once in 5 years. Besides voting, there are other ways of participating in the process of government. And what are those ways? So people participate by taking an interest in the working of the government and by criticizing it when required. If you like any policy of the government, you appreciate the government. Or when you do not like any policy of the government which is harming many people, or which is for the interest on which is for the interest of only few section of the few section of society, then the particular policy may be criticized by the section who is not benefited. So in August 2005, when particular government increased the money people had to pay for electricity, people expressed their disapproval very sharply. They took out rallies and also organized a signature campaign. The, the government tried to explain and defend its decision, but finally listened to the people's opinion and withdrew the increase. So this was one example. In 2005, government has increased the prices of electricity. So due to this policy, people expressed their disapproval very sharply. So initially, the people organized rallies and signature campaign. The government initially tried to explain and defend its decision, but when it felt that it is of no use, then finally government withdrew the increase. So what is it indicating? That peoples were participating in the negative sense. That means they have not liked any policy of the government. That is why they are protesting, and it is the duty of the government to resolve the conflicts. If any, the government had to change its decision because it is responsible to the people. It is government is under obligation, because government is of because people has elected their representative to work in the benefit of the people, not against the benefit of the people, not against the interest of the people. And so one way was protesting in the process of participating in the process of working of the government. That means protesting. There are many ways in which people express their views and make government understand that what particular they should take, what actions they should take. These include these include dharnas, rallies, strikes, signature campaign, etc. Things that are unfair and unjust are also brought forward. Newspapers, magazines, and TV also play a role in discussing government issues and responsibilities. While it is true that a democracy allows people to participate, it is also true that not all sections of people are actually able to do so. Another way of people to participate is by organizing themselves into social movement that seek to challenge the government and its functioning. One way is participating in elections, another way is participating in dharnas, rallies, strikes, signature campaign, when they do not like any policy of the government, or which is against the interest of the sections of the people, majority of the sections of the people. There are other ways, like they themselves organize into social movement that seek to challenge the government and its functioning. So member of minority community, dalits, adivasis, women, and other are often able to participate in this manner. If a country's people are alert and interested in how the country is run, the democratic character of the government of the country will be stronger. Means the country where the people are alert and interested in how the country is being run, then there the democratic character of the country will be stronger, because the people are aware about the functioning of the government, and they are alert people, they are aware people. So they react quickly when they feel that any particular action of the government is not in the favor of the majority of the section. So in that situation, the democratic character of the country will be stronger. Like in case of recent a farmer protest. The farmer protested almost for more than a year to demand against the three farm laws. They peacefully staged a protest. They tried to they tried government tried to convince the protesting farmers that the farm laws were in the interest of the farming community, but ultimately the leaders of the farmers were not convinced, and ultimately at the end the government had to bow down and they had to withdraw the controversial farm laws. So that was one way how people organize themselves into for the common interest of the people and force the government to take back the action which they had taken earlier. Okay, so the next time when you see a rally winding through the streets of our cities and towns or villages, you should pause to find out what the rally is about, who is participating in it, and what they are protesting about. So if you think about farmers rally, so you may find about why the rally, why they organized a protest, because they wanted the controversial farm laws to be rolled back. And who were participating? Farmers. And basically they were of the view that the three controversial farm laws were not in the interest of farmers, it is in the interest of businessmen. So that is why they were protesting for the withdrawal of the farm laws. The next important element of a democratic government is need to resolve conflict. In Maya's story, you read about how conflicts can often lead to violence and death because one group decide that it is all right to use to prevent uh, basically when because one group decides that it is all right to use force to prevent the other group from protesting. So conflict occur when people of different culture, different religion, region or economic background do not get along with each other, when some among them feel that they are being discriminated against. So people may use violent means to settle their differences. So this leads to fear and tension among others living in an area. Basically, what happens when people there is a feeling that the people are being discriminated, then they try to use violence to settle their differences. So this leads to fear and tension among others living in an area. The government is responsible for helping to resolve conflicts, so it is the duty of the government to help to resolve the conflicts. Let us read about some of the conflicts in our society and role of the government in resolving them. The Indian constitution lays down the basic rules or laws that have to be followed by everyone. These laws are for both the government and the people. Conflicts and differences have to be resolved according to these laws. Okay, and we will read about this in the later classes. So basically, one way of resolving the conflicts is following the constitutional laws. Okay. Similarly, religious processions and celebration can sometimes lead to conflict. For example, the route a procession take may lead to a conflict, as we have seen in case of Muharram procession or any procession of other religious community. So it is being a multi religious country, it's very common in case of India. The government, particularly the police, play an important role in getting representatives of concerned communities to meet and try and arrive at a solution. At times, there is fear that violence may erupt, with people throwing stones or trying to disrupt the procession. The police is responsible for ensuring that violence does not take place. Take the case of rivers. Rivers too can become a source of conflict between states. A river may begin in one state, flow through another state, and end in a third state. So when a common resource is flowing through three states, then conflict is bound to arise. So the sharing of river water between different states that the river goes through is becoming an issue of conflict. For example, you may have heard about Kaveri water dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. So basically, the water stored in the Krishna Raja Sagar Dam in Karnataka is used for irrigation a number of districts and for meeting the needs of the city of Bengaluru. The water stored in the Mathur Dam in the Tamil Nadu is used for crops grown in the delta region of the Tamil Nadu state. The conflict arises because both the dams are on the same river, that is Kaveri. So the downstream dam in Tamil Nadu can only be filled up if water is released from the upstream one located in Karnataka, hence the conflict. So in this situation both state cannot get as much water as they need for the people in their state. So this leads to conflict. Here the role of the central government comes. Central government has to step in and see that a fair distribution is worked out for both states. So have you got this? The conflict of Kaveri water dispute between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. So basically both wants equitable share for to meet the demand of water of the region. So both wants the maximum water resources. So ultimately the conflict arises and the central government steps in and see that a fair distribution is worked out for both the states. So the last or another important key element of the democratic government is equality and justice. So one of the key ideas of the democratic government is its commitment to equality and justice. Equality and justice both are inseparable. The earlier practice of untouchability is now banned by law. Article 17. So this group of people, they were denied education, they were denied transport or medical facilities, and even the chance to offer prayer. Dr. Ambedkar, whom you have read about earlier in this book, many others like him realized that such practices must not continue and that justice can only be achieved when people are treated equal. The government also recognizes this and makes special provision for groups within society that are unequal. For example, reservation for SC/ST. Okay, then various schemes Government is running various schemes for the weaker section of the society. That means women, children, and physically disabled persons. So government through these schemes tried to make the people equal, or try to reduce the inequality. So for instance, in our society there is general tendency to value and care for the boy child more than a girl child. So this is also inequality between boys and girls and discrimination towards girl child. This means that society does not value the girl and boy child equally, and this is unjust because they are not treating boys and girls equally. So it is unjust. So in this context, government steps in to promote justice by providing special provision that can enable girls to overcome the injustice that they are subjected to. So it is possible that fees for girl might be waived or lowered in government schools or colleges. So one of the scheme to uh, to enable girl to overcome the injustice they are suffering was uh, बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ, बेटी बचाओ and बेटी पढ़ाओ, selfie with daughter, selfie with daughter. So basically there are so many scheme which is directed towards the girls to overcome the injustice. Okay, so this was all in this chapter. I hope you uh, you have learned about the key elements of the democratic government. One is participation in the election, then protesting against the actions of the government. Okay, that means participation in negative sense. When you protest against the government, the means can be dharnas, rallies, strikes, signature campaign, or newspaper, magazines, and TV also play a important role. Then government's important task is to resolve the conflict which may be between different states, between different people. Okay, then equality and justice, that it is the duty of the government to ensure that every section of the society gets justice, and they should not feel that they are being discriminated against, or they should not feel unequal. Government, if they feel being discriminated or they feel injustice, then it is the duty of the government to overcome that injustice, and for that government can make uh, schemes, or government can take affirmative actions. Affirmative actions means the government's program for the upliftment or the betterment of the particular section of the society. Okay, I hope this chapter is clear to you. Just go through the questions given at the end of this chapter for more clarity and try to solve these questions. Okay, if you have any doubt, please post me in the comment section. I'll try to revert as soon as possible. Thank you very much. See you in the next lecture.